Good morning. I am Dr. Jinish. I am from Department of Chemistry, Ramaya University of Applied Sciences. Welcome to the course Engineering Chemistry. I will be taking the lectures for you for this course Engineering Chemistry. Today is introduction session. In this session, I will discuss mainly 5 points. We will discuss about what are the major topics or units in this course, what are the intended learning outcomes for this course, what are the course contents, what are the things that we are going to study in this course, what are the resources required for to study these courses, that means which are the books, what kind of notes you will be getting, those informations also I'll be providing in this lecture. Last, I will give you introduction, a very brief introduction about the first unit, that is Introduction to Electrochemistry. Welcome to the course. The course is divided into 8 different units. They are Introduction to Electrochemistry, Storage Devices, which contains both batteries and fuel cells, Corrosion Science, Metal Finishing, Chemical Kinetics, Fuels and Flue Gases, Polymers, Introduction to Nanoscience and Nanotechnology. What are the intended learning outcomes from this course? At the end of the course, students are expected to solve or answer the following questions. First one, explain the basic concepts of electrochemistry, conversion of chemical energy into electrical energy, theory of corrosion, and principles of metal finishing. You should be able to differentiate renewable and non-renewable fuels, primary and secondary electrodes, primary and secondary batteries, batteries and fuel cells, electroplating, electroless plating, thermosetting, thermoplastic polymers, dry corrosion, and wet corrosion. You should be able to discuss the reaction chemistry and stoichiometric combustion of fuels, remedial measures to control oxides of nitrogen, sulfur, and carbon, the polymerization methods, mechanism, preparation, properties, and applications of some polymers, concepts of nanoscience and nanotechnology. You should be able to identify the types of corrosion and methods to prevent corrosion, suitable polymers and nanocomposite materials for engineering applications. You have to derive the kinetic rate equations for various chemical systems and equations for electromotive force. Last, you should analyze the suitability of polymers and composites for various applications and problems related to chemical kinetics, electrochemistry, corrosion, and metal finishing. Our first unit is Introduction to Electrochemistry. In this course, we will study about different types of electrochemical cells, the concept of electrode potential generation and electromotive force in a galvanic cell. We will study about different types of reference electrodes. We will solve numerical problems related to electrode potential or cell EMF of galvanic cells. We will study about the construction and working principle of ion selective electrodes. Second unit is storage devices and conversion devices. In storage devices, we will study about batteries. We will study differences between primary and secondary batteries, construction, working principles, properties, advantages, disadvantages of both primary and secondary batteries. We will also study about the conversion devices such as fuel cell, how to construct a fuel cell, what is the working principle behind the fuel cell, what are the advantages and disadvantages of fuel cells. Also, we will study the differences between a battery and a fuel cell. Unit 3 is about corrosion science. We will study about different types of corrosion. We will study the theory behind the corrosion. What are the factors affecting the corrosion? How to prevent the corrosion? How to slow down the corrosion of metals? All these points we will study in the third unit, that is corrosion science. In the fourth unit, metal finishing, we will study about the importance of metal coating, how to do electrodeposition of one metal over another metal, how to do electroless plating of metal on another metal, and what are the differences between electroplating and electroless plating. In the fifth unit, chemical kinetics, we will study about different orders of reactions. What are the factors affecting the rate of reaction? Why some reactions occurs at faster rate, why occurs at a slower rate, etc. In unit 6, we will discuss about different types of fuels, classification of fuels, sources of fuels, how we can characterize a fuel, what are the characteristics of a good fuel, how to do petroleum refining, what is the importance of petroleum cracking, what is knocking and its effect in petrol-based engines, what are the anti-knocking agents. We will study about how to synthesize bio-based fuels. Then we will study about what are the reasons behind flue gas generation in the atmosphere and how to control the flue gases in the atmosphere. In polymers, we will study about the classification of polymers, types of polymerization, mechanisms of polymerization, the properties of polymers, what are the differences between petroleum-based polymers and biodegradable polymers, what are the important polymers and their applications, etc. In the last topic, we will study about what is nanoscience, why materials behave in a different manner when they are converted into nanoform, how to synthesize nanomaterials in the laboratory, what are the applications of nanomaterials, what are the major nanomaterials being used in industries, in computers, in sensors, in automobiles, in aerospace, in medical applications. Those things we will study about in the last unit, which is nanoscience and nanotechnology. These are the resources that you require to study this course. Class notes in the form of PPT will be provided to you at the start of this semester. I will be giving my own comprehensive lecture notes. I will be providing the notes before each unit. So today I will give you the first unit's lecture note. Engineering Chemistry by O.G. Pallana, very simple and very good book for undergraduate students. Advanced Physical Chemistry, where you can learn more information about chemical kinetics using Gurudeep Raj textbook. Nityananda Shetty and Gadak, they have written one book, Engineering Chemistry, that is also a very basic book which is useful for undergraduate students. Last, the resources, that is a textbook of nanoscience and nanotechnology written by Dr. Pradeep. That is also a very good book to understand the basics of nanoscience and nanotechnology. So these are the resources that you require for studying this course. We will start today's lecture by mentioning the milestones in the field of electricity and electrochemistry. This will help us to gather knowledge about how the field of electricity and electrochemistry was introduced and explored. Benjamin Franklin in mid-18th century has carried out the famous kite experiment. Flying a kite in a storm was perhaps Benjamin Franklin's most famous experiment that led to the understanding of connection between electricity and lightning. This connection, which was already known but not fully understood that time. The kite experiment is a scientific experiment in which a kite with a pointed conducting wire attached to its apex is flown near thunderclouds to collect electricity from the air and conduct it down the wet kite string to the ground. It was proposed by Benjamin Franklin with the assistance of his son William Franklin. The experiment's purpose was to uncover the unknown facts about the nature of the lightning and electricity, and with further experiments on the ground to demonstrate that the lightning and electricity were the results of the same phenomena. So, what is the takeaway point from this experiment? Lightning and electricity were the result of the same phenomenon. This experiment led to the understanding of connection between electricity and lightning. So Benjamin Franklin identified that the lightning and electricity were the results of the same phenomenon. All of us are using different types of batteries for our different electronic equipments. Batteries provided the main source of electricity before the development of the present electric generators and electrical grids around the end of the 19th century. Presently, the most contributing electrical energy resources or source is electric generators, which is kept either in hydroelectric power station or thermal power station or nuclear power station. But before 19th century or before the end of the 19th century, batteries provided the main source of electricity. Improvement in battery technology facilitated major electrical advances from early scientific studies to the rise of telegraph, telephones, eventually leading to portable computers, mobile phone, electric cars, and many other electrical devices. Now, in the present scenario, we use lithium-ion batteries mainly for powering either your vehicle or your mobile phone, laptops. Louis Galvani, an Italian physicist, discovered something he named animal electricity when two different metals were connected in series with a frog's leg and to one another. He found that when two different metals are connected to a frog's leg, the legs of the frog suddenly moved. He named this observation as animal electricity. But Galvani couldn't explain what is the reason behind that animal electricity. Alexander Volta, he realized that frog's leg served as both a conductor of electricity, presently we call it as electrolyte, and as a detector of electricity, we can call a frog galvanoscope. Galvanoscope is an instrument which can measure the presence of electricity. So he identified that frog's leg is acting as a detector of electricity. So frog's leg acts as a conductor or an electrolyte as well as a detector. That's the reason when two different metals were kept on frog's leg, the frog's leg was kicked. He identified that. I think you have studied about galvanoscope as a detector of electricity, right, in your PUC and in your high school. Volta also understood that the frog's leg were irrelevant to electric current, which was caused by the two different metals. So he replaced frog's leg with brine-soaked paper. So he needed one electrolyte. So he didn't use frog's leg. Instead of that, he used brine-soaked paper as its electrolyte. Brine is a concentrated solution of salt. All of you know that. He detected the flow of electricity. So instead of keeping frog's leg, if you are keeping only two metals in a brine solution, then also the electricity will produce. He understood that concept. He verified his hypothesis through different experiments and published his results in 1791. So he understood with the two different types of metals, and if you have one conductor of electricity, presently known as electrolyte, then you can generate electricity. He got that idea in 1791. After that, in 1800, Volta invented his first true battery, which came to be known as voltaic pile. You can see the photo of voltaic pile in this slide. This voltaic pile consisted of pairs of copper and zinc discs piled on top of each other, separated by a layer of cloth or cardboard soaked in brine. So in voltaic pile, you can see piles of copper and zinc plate. So piles of two different metals dipped in brine solution, a paper or a cloth which is dipped in brine solution, which acted as an electrolyte. And he found that electricity is produced. The voltaic pile produced a continuous electricity and stable current and lost little charge over time when not in use. We studied that Alessandro Volta, he invented battery. But even after the invention of first battery, there was no information about the relationship between chemical reaction and electricity. Alessandro Volta was not having any kind of idea how the electricity is produced. He was unaware of the electricity is produced by a chemical reaction. Sir Humphrey Davy in 1806, just after 5 years of the invention of the first battery, proved the relationship between chemical reaction and electricity. Humphrey Davy was a pioneer in the field of electrochemistry who used electrolysis to isolate many elements from the compounds in which they occur naturally. For example, presently, I'm not talking about what Humphrey Davy did. Now we know that aluminium we used to get it from its ore, bauxite, using electrolysis. So if you can do electrolysis of bauxite ore, we will get aluminium. That is known as an electrolysis based isolation of one element from its compound. Electrolysis is the process by which an electrolyte is altered or decomposed by applying an electric current. So Humphrey Davy, he identified the relationship between chemical reaction and electricity. Also, he used electrolysis to separate elements from its compounds. So we can say Humphrey Davy discovered the field of electrochemistry. In 1820, Hans Christian Ørsted performed an important experiment which showed that there was a connection between electricity and magnetism. We will study what he had done. He passed electricity through a wire and kept one compass near to the wire, like in this figure. When a current was passed through a wire, it made the compass needle to deflect. You have studied this experiment in your school that when you studied about electromagnetism. So this introduction or the concept of electromagnetism came in 1820, which is from an experiment done by Hans Christian Ørsted. At the same time, in 1820s, Ampere identifies the current as the source of all magnetism, even permanent magnets. Although he was not the first person to observe a connection between electricity and magnetism, we know that already Ørsted had done some experiments which relates magnetism and electricity. Although he was not the first person to observe a connection between electricity and magnetism, Ampere was the first scientist to attempt to theoretically explain and mathematically describe the phenomena. Even though Oersted did an experiment, he couldn't explain the theory behind this electricity and magnetism. Ampere, he attempted to theoretically explain with the help of mathematics to describe this phenomena. His contribution laid the groundwork upon which the science of electrodynamics, a term coined by Ampere, but now more commonly referred to as electromagnetism. Now we call it as electromagnetism. At that time, Ampere called it as electrodynamics. In 1831, famous scientist Michael Faraday experimentally discovered that a time-varying magnetic flux through a conducting loop also generated voltage and thus electric field. So Michael Faraday experimentally proved that if you vary the magnetic flux inside a conducting loop of a conductor, then you will get a voltage or electric field. You already studied this in your school. And he found that electric field and magnetic fields, they are coupled. You studied those things as electromagnetic induction in your school. His main discoveries include the principle underlying electromagnetic induction, diamagnetism, and electrolysis. He invented the first electric motor in 1821, which is given in the second picture. First dynamo in 1831, shown in the third picture, and later he found out the concept or the reasons behind electrolysis. After Michael Faraday's experiments, Serbian-American engineer and physicist Nikola Tesla made dozens of breakthroughs in the production, transmission, and application of electric field. He invented the first alternating current motor and developed AC generation and transmission technology. You can see how the first alternating current motor looks. By studying all these milestones, now we know that there is a clear interaction or interrelationship between electricity and chemical reaction, and even electricity and magnetism. So now we know there is a relationship between chemical reaction and electricity, magnetism and electricity. Summary of today's class. We studied about 8 units in engineering chemistry. The intended learning outcomes from this course. What are the course contents that you have to study? What are the resources required for studying this course? Milestones in electrochemistry.